Signal intercept. In the winter of 2024, NSA Cyber operations detected something that would change the course of a war. Not a missile, not a tank column, something far more dangerous. A coordinated cyber operation designed to plunge 43 million people into darkness during the coldest months of the year. This is the story of how signal intelligence prevented a humanitarian catastrophe. The first anomaly appeared on a Tuesday morning. NSA analysts monitoring Eastern European communications traffic noticed unusual patterns in satellite transmissions originating from a facility outside Moscow. The signals were encrypted using a military-grade protocol that Russian intelligence services reserved for their most sensitive operations. For 8 months, NSA Cyber had been developing tools to break this specific encryption standard. The breakthrough came 3 weeks before the winter offensive was scheduled to begin. When the first decoded messages appeared on analyst screens, the scope of the operation became horrifyingly clear. The operation was codenamed Frozen Silence. Russian military intelligence had coordinated with state-sponsored hacking units to launch a synchronized cyber attack against Ukrainian power infrastructure. The target list, extracted from intercepted communications, included 17 major power stations, 43 electrical substations, 12 natural gas distribution centers, and the central grid control systems for 6 oblasts. The attack was scheduled for January 15th. Temperature forecasts for that week showed nighttime lows of -28 degrees Celsius across eastern Ukraine. NSA cyber analysts understood immediately what this meant. Without power, heating systems would fail, hospitals would lose life support, water treatment plants would shut down. In those temperatures, exposure could kill within hours. The intercepted communications revealed meticulous planning. One decoded message read, "Phase Alpha targets confirmed, 17 generation facilities, malware deployment complete, awaiting activation signal." Another transmission intercepted 48 hours later. "Phase Beta ready, 43 substations compromised, backup systems will fail within 6 minutes of primary attack." A third message marked urgent. "Phase Gamma confirmation, gas distribution SCADA systems penetrated, emergency shutoff protocols disabled, pressure systems vulnerable." The NSA Cyber team began mapping the full scope of the Russian operation. What they discovered was unprecedented in scale. The attack infrastructure had been built over 14 months. Russian hackers had infiltrated Ukrainian power systems through a supply chain compromise, inserting malicious code into software updates distributed to utility companies across the country. The malware had remained dormant, waiting for activation. Signal intelligence revealed the command structure. A general in Moscow's military intelligence directorate was coordinating directly with 3 separate hacking units. Communications showed real-time updates on infiltration progress, vulnerability assessments, and attack timing. One intercepted satellite phone conversation between the general and a unit commander was particularly chilling. "The hospitals will lose power first, then residential heating. By morning, the death toll will force capitulation. And if they restore power, they cannot. We control the restoration systems. Every attempt to reconnect will trigger secondary attacks. They will be blind, cold, and helpless." NSA cyber analysts calculated the potential impact. Based on the target list, population density, weather forecasts, and historical data from previous power outages, the projected casualty figures were staggering. Conservative estimates: 12,000 deaths within the first 72 hours, primarily elderly, children, and hospital patients. Extended outage scenario: 45,000 deaths within 2 weeks, mass displacement of 3 million people, complete collapse of medical infrastructure across 6 oblasts. The intercepted timeline showed 11 days until the attack. NSA Cyber immediately initiated emergency protocols. Intelligence was shared with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the Department of Defense, and through secure channels with Ukrainian intelligence services. But sharing intelligence was only the first step. The malware was already embedded in Ukrainian systems. Removing it without triggering the attack required surgical precision. NSA analysts continued decoding intercepted communications, searching for technical details about the malware architecture. Every decoded message revealed new layers of the operation. The Russian hackers had installed multiple redundancy systems. If one attack vector was blocked, 3 others would activate automatically. If Ukrainian defenders attempted to isolate compromised systems, the malware would trigger immediate destruction of hardware components. One Intercepted technical briefing described the approach. Total system destruction, not disruption, destruction. Replacement timeline, 18 months minimum. They will freeze before they can rebuild. 8 days before the scheduled attack, NSA Cyber achieved a critical breakthrough. Analysts intercepted a transmission containing the malware's command and control architecture. The attackers had made a single mistake. Their backup communication channel used a slightly different encryption protocol, one that NSA had already compromised. This channel revealed the location of the primary command servers and, crucially, the authentication codes required to send the activation signal. The intelligence was immediately shared with Ukrainian cyber defense units, and a joint US-European task force assembled specifically for this threat. The counter-operation began at 3:47 a.m., 7 days before the Russian attack was scheduled. Working from NSA intelligence, Ukrainian defenders began systematically identifying and isolating compromised systems. But they couldn't simply remove the malware. That would alert Russian operators and potentially trigger an immediate attack. Instead, they implemented a strategy developed jointly by NSA Cyber and allied intelligence services. They would let the Russians believe their operation remained undetected while secretly neutralizing the threat. For 72 hours, technicians worked around the clock. They created mirror systems that would absorb the attack while real infrastructure remained protected. They installed hidden fail-safes that would block malware execution at the moment of activation. They mapped every compromised component and prepared replacement hardware for immediate deployment. Meanwhile, NSA Cyber continued monitoring Russian communications, tracking any changes to the attack timeline or methodology. Every intercepted message was analyzed in real time, ensuring defenders stayed one step ahead. 4 days before the scheduled attack, Russian operators conducted a final system check. Intercepted communications showed them verifying malware status across all targets. All systems nominal, awaiting final authorization. The message was sent to Moscow. NSA Cyber intercepted the response 3 hours later. Authorization confirmed for January 15, 200 local time. Proceed with final preparations. The countdown had begun. NSA Cyber shared this intelligence immediately. Defenders knew exactly when the attack would come. They had 96 hours to complete preparations. In those final days, the joint operation expanded. American and European cyber commands deployed additional resources. Satellite surveillance tracked physical movements at Russian military facilities, providing additional confirmation of attack timing. Intercepted communications showed Russian confidence. They had no indication their operation had been compromised. Everything proceeds as planned. By dawn on the 15th, 6 oblasts will be dark. Hospitals will begin losing patients by noon. Residential casualties will accelerate through the night. By the 17th, international pressure will force negotiations. And our cover? Perfect. Infrastructure failure, aging Soviet equipment, Western sanctions preventing maintenance, no fingerprints. January 14th, 2024. 18 hours before the attack. Final preparations were complete. Ukrainian systems appeared unchanged to Russian monitors, but every critical component had been protected. Mirror systems stood ready to absorb the malware's destructive payload. Emergency response teams were positioned at all 17 power stations. NSA Cyber maintained continuous surveillance. Every Russian communication was intercepted, decoded, and analyzed. Any change in plans would be detected immediately. At 11:47 p.m. local time, intercepted traffic showed final attack preparations. Each system's armed. Activation in 2 hours, 13 minutes. Confirmed target readiness. All targets confirmed. 17 power stations, 43 substations, 12 gas facilities. Total grid collapse in approximately 4 minutes post-activation. Excellent. History will remember this as the night Ukraine froze. January 15, 2024. 2 o'clock local time. The attack was launched precisely on schedule. From command centers outside Moscow, Russian operators sent activation signals to dormant malware across Ukrainian infrastructure. They expected immediate system failures, cascading outages, and the beginning of a humanitarian catastrophe. Instead, they watched their screens in confusion. Activation signals were received by mirror systems designed to simulate attack success. Russian monitors showed Ukrainian power grids collapsing. Emergency alerts flooded fake dashboards. All indicators suggested total operational success. In reality, not a single Ukrainian home lost power. The malware executed against phantom systems while actual infrastructure continued functioning normally. Russian operators spent 4 hours believing their attack had succeeded before communication intercepts from Ukraine revealed the truth. NSA Cyber captured the moment Russian command realized what had happened. Sir, Ukrainian news is reporting normal operations. Impossible. Check our systems. Sir, our systems show total success. But satellite imagery shows lights across all target cities. Then how? Sir, we've been compromised. The intercepted response was a single word, followed by silence. In the weeks that followed, the full scope of the prevented catastrophe became clear. Ukrainian authorities conducted detailed assessments based on the attack's intended impact. The malware, if successfully deployed, would have destroyed hardware components at all 17 power stations, requiring complete replacement. Average restoration time, 14 to 18 months. Medical officials calculated that hospital power failures would have resulted in the deaths of approximately 2,300 patients on life support or requiring powered medical equipment within the first 6 hours. Heating system failures across 6 oblasts would have affected 4.7 million people. Based on weather conditions and historical cold exposure mortality rates, projected deaths from hypothermia exceeded 15,000 within the first week, with elderly and young children comprising the majority of victims. Water treatment failures would have created secondary health crises, with contaminated water supplies potentially affecting 8.2 million people. Total prevented casualties, according to joint U.S.-Ukrainian assessment, between 23,000 and 47,000 deaths, depending on response effectiveness and attack duration. Beyond immediate casualties, the economic and social disruption would have been devastating. Mass displacement, infrastructure collapse, and prolonged power outages would have affected virtually every aspect of Ukrainian society during an ongoing conflict. None of this happened because NSA Cyber detected the encrypted communications, because 8 months of work broke an unbreakable protocol, because signal intelligence revealed the attack timeline, targets, and methodology, because that intelligence was shared with partners who could act on it. This is what signal intelligence prevents. Not every threat announces itself. Not every attack comes with warning. But when encrypted communications hide plans for mass casualties, NSA Cyber works to expose them. The operation against Ukrainian power infrastructure was one of the most sophisticated cyber attacks ever attempted. It combined advanced malware, supply chain compromise, multi-target coordination, and precise timing designed to maximize casualties during extreme weather conditions. It failed because signals were intercepted, encryption was broken, and intelligence was shared with those who could prevent catastrophe. The Russian general who coordinated the operation was identified through intercepted communications. His name was added to international sanctions lists. 3 of his subordinates were indicted by international courts for conspiracy to commit war crimes. The hacking units involved were tracked, their infrastructure mapped, and their future operations monitored. Several subsequent attack attempts were detected and neutralized before activation. Ukrainian cyber defense capabilities, enhanced through partnership with Western intelligence services, continued to improve. The techniques developed during this operation were adapted to protect other critical infrastructure. And 43 million Ukrainians survived the winter. They never knew how close they came. They never knew that 11 days before the coldest week of January, intercepted communications revealed a plan to freeze their country into submission. They never knew that analysts working through nights in secure facilities decoded the messages that exposed the threat. They only knew that when they woke on January 15th, their lights still worked, their heating still functioned, their hospitals still operated. That is what signal intelligence provides. Not glory, not recognition, just the quiet prevention of catastrophe. NSA Cyber continues monitoring. New threats emerge constantly. State actors develop new encryption, new attack methods, new ways to hide their operations. But every signal can be intercepted. Every encryption can eventually be broken. Every plan hidden in digital communications can be revealed. The operation, codenamed Frozen Silence, was designed to kill through infrastructure collapse. It was detected through signal intelligence, decoded through cryptographic expertise, and prevented through international cooperation. 23,000 to 47,000 lives saved, 4.7 million people protected from displacement, 6 oblasts preserved from humanitarian catastrophe. That is the power of signal intelligence. That is NSA Cyber. Signal intercept, decode, prevent. The story you've just heard represents the kind of operations that protect nations from invisible threats. Cyber attacks don't announce themselves. They hide in encrypted communications, dormant malware, and carefully planned timelines. NSA Cyber exists to find them before they activate. In the digital age, the most dangerous weapons don't explode. They execute code. They corrupt systems. They destroy infrastructure that millions depend on for survival. Detecting these threats requires constant vigilance, advanced capabilities, and the ability to see what attackers believe is invisible. Every day, signals are intercepted, communications are decoded, threats are identified, and operations are prevented before they can cause harm. Most of this work will never be known. The threats that are stopped don't make headlines. The attacks that fail don't claim victims. The catastrophes that don't happen don't enter public consciousness. But they were real. The plans were real. The intentions were real. And the people who would have died were real. Signal intelligence is the invisible shield. It protects without being seen. It prevents without being acknowledged. It saves lives that will never know they were in danger. The Russian operation against Ukrainian power infrastructure was stopped. 23,000 to 47,000 people who would have died are still alive. Millions who would have been displaced remained in their homes. Because signals were intercepted, because encryption was broken, because intelligence was shared. NSA Cyber, protecting what matters through the invisible art of signal intelligence. The lessons learned from Operation Frozen Silence continue to shape cyber defense strategies worldwide. The techniques used to detect, decode, and defeat this attack have been adapted and refined for future threats. Intelligence agencies across NATO have studied this operation. The methods used to break Russian military encryption have been applied to other state-sponsored operations. The coordination protocols developed between NSA Cyber and Ukrainian defenders have become templates for international cyber defense cooperation. But perhaps the most important lesson is the simplest one. Every attack leaves signals. Every operation requires communication. Every plan must be coordinated, and every signal can be intercepted. The Russian planners believed their encryption was unbreakable. They believed their communications were secure. They believed their operation was invisible to Western intelligence. They were wrong on all counts. NSA Cyber had spent years developing capabilities specifically designed for this type of threat. The 8-month effort to break the encryption protocol was just the final stage of work that began long before this specific operation was conceived. When the breakthrough came, it came because of sustained investment in signal intelligence capabilities. It came because analysts understood that protecting critical infrastructure meant understanding how adversaries would attack it. It came because the United States and its allies recognized that cyber operations posed existential threats to civilian populations. The attack on Ukrainian power infrastructure was designed as a weapon of war. It was intended to cause mass civilian casualties, break Ukrainian resistance, and demonstrate the vulnerability of modern societies to digital attack. Instead, it demonstrated the power of signal intelligence to protect those same societies. The 43 million Ukrainians who survived the winter of 2024 are living proof of what dedicated intelligence work can accomplish. The hospitals that kept operating, the heating systems that kept functioning, the water that kept flowing. All of it was protected by analysts who decoded messages revealing plans for their destruction. This is the mission of NSA Cyber. Not to wage war, but to prevent it. Not to attack, but to defend. Not to destroy, but to protect. In the invisible world of signals and encryption, threats can emerge from anywhere. State actors, terrorist organizations, criminal networks, all of them use digital communications to plan operations that threaten civilian lives. NSA Cyber monitors these communications. It develops tools to decode them. It shares intelligence with partners who can act on it. And it works day after day to stay ahead of threats that most people will never know existed. The operation against Ukrainian power infrastructure was stopped. The people who would have died are still alive. The country that was supposed to freeze into submission continued fighting for its survival. All because signals were intercepted. All because encryption was broken. All because intelligence was shared in time. This is what NSA Cyber does. This is why signal intelligence matters. This is how invisible threats are defeated before they can cause visible harm. The next threat is already being planned somewhere in the world. Communications are being sent, encrypted, coordinated. Somewhere, state actors or criminal networks are developing operations designed to cause mass casualties. NSA Cyber is watching, listening, decoding. The signals will be intercepted. The encryption will be broken. The plans will be revealed. And the next catastrophe will be prevented, just like this one was. Signal intercept, decode, prevent, protect. That is the mission. That is the commitment. That is NSA Cyber.